Well, welcome everyone. You are listening to Information and Inspiration with Jen Julius, helping you take control of your own life by finding clarity, improving your communication, and building confidence to achieve your goals. For more information about me and my guest, you can go to jenjulius.com and check out the On the Radio tab. Today, I have Holly Doll on my show, and we are going to be discussing values, goals, and opportunities. Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh my. I'm pretty excited about this because the thing that really inspired this show for us, well, first of all, we had so much fun on the first show last year.
That's true.
That was a pretty good one. Addiction, recovery, and following your dreams. So we kind of keep the theme consistent. We had so much fun that we said, we got to do this again. And the thing that I think really inspired it is that we're both young women in alternative entrepreneurial settings. I mean,
that's a good one.
Is that a good summary of it?
Description.
Yeah. So I'm a life coach and you're an alternative model.
Exactly.
And it's like, how do you even do those things? We don't know. We just figure it out as we go, right?
It's kind of a learning experience all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that some people probably didn't hear our first show, so they might not know much about you. So why don't you tell them a little bit about who Holly Doll is and a little bit more about what alternative modeling is for you?
Okay, well, I'm building a brand, the Holly Doll, and a little bit more about me. I'm definitely consider myself an alternative model because I don't fit in with the norm, but I don't fit in with a norm in the alternative world either. I consider myself versatile, fitting into whatever I need to fit in for that look, for that shoot, for that business. I also am the manager of Capital Ink Tattoo, so I'm also running a legitimate, standing business besides building my brand. Definitely a learning curve all the time.
I bet. Especially in, when you're building it yourself as your business, which I can relate to, it's really figuring out, okay, what am I going to create and how am I going to create it and what do I stand for and how do I represent that? Because I think that's the tricky thing which is why we're talking about values and goals and figuring out how to say yes or no to opportunities along the way. Because
what do I want to represent me?
Yeah, exactly. And especially we're both young women. We're not even 30 yet. And I'm actually starting to get so close to 30 that I'm getting anxious.
I don't want to talk about it.
I know. And it's like my forehead wrinkles have gotten out of control. Can you see them? It's crazy.
Oh yeah, they look terrible.
I even put I know. I put a Facebook post up the other day with mine and my partner's forehead wrinkles. And I said, oh my gosh, look at these, who's got better ones? I can't handle it. I don't know. Anyways. Forehead. Let's just make the whole show about forehead wrinkles. How does that sound?
Can we talk about forehead wrinkles and gray hairs?
All day long. Do you have one yet?
I don't yet, but I dye my hair purple, so they're all different colors.
They're purple gray.
They're purple gray.
I think the purple covers it pretty well. So, yeah, I know. When I've had my first gray hair, I have no idea what my reaction will be. I'll either cry or celebrate or just go to sleep. I don't know.
I've already decided that when I get to be older and my hair starts graying and they call all those old ladies the blue-haired ladies, I'm going to literally just dye my hair blue.
I think that's great. And I love the salt and pepper look. The women that have that really nice where it turns silver and dark and it's all I think that looks pretty cool.
I think I might just do it on purpose.
I think you should. Anyways, this is the other risk you take when you listen to Jen and Holly on the radio together.
We go on tangents.
We do, but it's all applicable because it's the journey of being young women, right?
Right, exactly.
Trying to figure out. And here's the deal too. I'm going to go off on a quick tangent that makes sense though. Hold on. So when we talk about things and we talk about development, we look at adolescent development, we look at young adult development, and we look at brain development. And there's a lot of science out there that says the brain's still developing until 25. There's other research that actually contradicts that and says the brain never stops developing. But a lot of the development is completed around age 25. So when we look at that, you and I have been building our businesses since before that. And so what's fascinating to me is that we're still actively developing ourselves, who we are, and our brain's developing itself and how it's functioning while we're trying to create this business at the same time, which I would think makes it even more tricky.
It is. It's like constantly moving gears and making sure each tooth interlocks correctly.
Yeah, I like that.
It really is. You have all of these moving objects, and you just have to make sure that when they pass, they have to fit into each groove perfectly.
Right. So our topic today, values, goals, and opportunities. I think the thing that really inspired us to go on this topic was when we were looking at our business world right now. And as you and I are growing and developing in our businesses, how opportunities will start popping up and you start to have to figure out what to say no to. And I think when you're first really getting into the field, both of our fields probably, you say yes to a lot of things, right? Because you're trying to get your feet wet, you're trying to get exposure, you're trying to build relationships. But then as you become a little bit more established and you also start figuring out what you and your brand represent, you got to start saying no. And I feel like that becomes tricky because navigating what to say no to and what to say yes to is really challenging for me. I mean, what's your experience with that?
It's proved incredibly challenging. I've just recently, in this last year of 2014, have begun experiencing the lack of time, being that I've taken on so many projects that my level of attention to each one is depleted. And I'm not giving each one my 100% attention, and that is affecting me. But also realizing that some of them don't align with what I want my brand to look like.
Right.
Yes, they may be a great opportunity, but they don't align with they're not going to go anywhere for me. They're not going to do anything for me. And I find that even in myself with my own likes and dislikes, I don't even want to do them. Right. They may be great opportunities, but I don't even like them.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it comes down to that. And that's where it's tricky because I have to figure out sometimes, am I just being, a snooty jerk and saying, no, I don't want to do that.
I find I have that exact same battle. Like, am I being snooty? Am I being a diva by turning this opportunity down? Or am I being a diva by saying, no, that doesn't align with my goals? Or I just don't want to do that. That's not fun.
Right.
And a lot of it is also, you have to weigh, money is valuable, but my time is very valuable.
Yes.
And the type of image I'm trying to put out for my brand is valuable.
Yes.
So I have to kind of weigh, when am I being a diva and when am I being honest with myself?
I think that that's a great point. And I think that one of the things that you just touched on too is protecting our time, right? And it's something that my coach actually is very clear about consistently, that her time is sacred and she's extremely protective over it. And it's not just on the basis of time management, allotting certain time for certain tasks. It's making sure that what you're choosing to engage in and spend your time with is valuable in all aspects, right? Not just business wise, but even when in the personal realm,
Oh, totally.
You get to a place almost in your life where you don't need to be, you don't want to be hanging out with people that you don't want to be hanging out with.
Yeah, and it's what it is that I feel like the people in my life, I have them there because I enjoy their company. They are a value to me in my soul, my heart, my brain, my mind. And if they're not contributing to my good well-being and making me feel good about myself and I feel good being with them, I have to be able to say, maybe you're not worth my time.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. It's a conflict of personalities.
So
I guess it is personal.
Let's put it this way: we basically don't want to hang out with people that suck,
oh!
right? I mean, and I know it's not even 9 yet, but let's just get really real because that's what I promised in our blurb about our show.
I haven't even finished my coffee yet.
The raw and real, I know, right? Me either. The raw and real views on life, right? And I think what it comes down to is people aren't going to click with everybody.
No.
And I think that's something that inspired this conversation as well, is really talking about as you become more established and as you become bigger in your business world or your world or whatever, you're going to find that more people don't like you that much.
And that's okay.
Exactly. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to develop an okayness with. I know for me it sure was. I mean, a few years ago.
It's incredibly difficult for me.
Oh, yeah. A few years ago, I couldn't stand when someone was upset with me or mad at me or something. And now it's still challenging, but as it seems to be happening more often.
Maybe you're just getting used to it now?
Or I don't know, maybe I'm just getting meaner. Maybe I'm getting grumpy in my old age. I don't know.
In your old age.
I know, right? It's the forehead wrinkles. I think that now I'm more so understanding. A coach friend of mine put it best. She said that rejection doesn't exist. It's simply a mismatch of energetic levels. So meaning this could be applied to if you're applying for a job, going to a job interview and you don't get the job. You and that job or that company may have not been on the same energetic level, right? Same as thing as sometimes when people separate, people break up, they have shifted energetic levels. Maybe when they met, they were on the same level, but maybe one of them started doing a lot of personal growth work. Maybe they got sober. The other one didn't. Those people might not be on the same energetic level anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they got together before they were 25 and they're still growing.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. And I think that it's not, sometimes people get confused with, it's not that we're saying that one person is better than the other.
No,
it
not
is
at all.
absolutely possible to just simply not be on the same level as someone else.
And not be on the same growth plan.
Yeah, yeah. Because not everyone, like you and I are similar in these ways. We both happen to have college degrees. How many do you have?
I have 3.
3 bachelors, right?
Yeah, but it's not because of by choice. It's just because I have ADD.
You know what, though? Talk about channeling. I always contribute my addiction to being part of the reason I got my master's at 24, meaning I figured out how to harness that energy. Once I quit using, I said, well, you know what, why don't I, maybe I can use this passion and this intensity for something productive, right?
Yeah.
And I got my master's by 24. I think for you, you could really say, you know what? ADD was great. It got me 3 college degrees.
Yeah, because all that happened was about 2 years into every single major I decided, I go, I don't really feel like doing that anymore.
That's
and
funny.
By the time it got to year 8, where I could wrap up one of the degrees, I only needed, I don't know, probably 3 classes from each degree to complete it.
Wow.
So I said, all right, fine. I'll do an extra semester and finish it.
So what are your 3 degrees in?
Social psychology, business with a concentration in marketing, and consumer science with a concentration on apparel marketing and design.
Holy crap.
I thought I wanted to go into fashion. I don't know what I was talking about because I tried cutting up a shirt a couple weeks ago, and I went through about 6 shirts and ruined them completely. Trying to do those little snips.
Were you using the cool cutters? That's what one of my clients just called them the other day. I said, I've got the fun scissors. She says, we call them cool cutters in my classroom. I
was using my kitchen scissors because I'm a retard.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Those are really good shirts, and one of them was a sponsor, and I actually had to hang my head and be like, I will buy a new shirt. Can I just have it? Because I ruined it.
That's funny. Well, and here's a good thing for us. If we have time, we should probably expand on, is knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And being okay with them.
And being okay that I can't fulfill my dream as a fashion designer.
Or maybe you are the one that comes up with the idea and someone else is the creator.
Or I'll just be a photo prop and I will sell your designs. How
Perfect. I like that too. And here's the deal with, you know what, can we touch on this real quick? Because I have something to say about strengths and weaknesses. Yeah?
Let's hear it.
So with strengths and weaknesses, people are often trying to say, how can you improve your weaknesses? And how can you, make them better and turn them, avoid them and all this, I don't know, all this stuff about weaknesses being a bad thing, right? Which really frustrates me because I think that sometimes if we just know and accept things about ourselves and let them be, it can be really empowering. So for example, if you're not a good shirt cutter, maybe you don't cut shirts, and that's okay. Because then maybe you get to go focus on something you're better at,
And you know what I think a lot of is I recently had a conversation with someone about makeup artists and hairstylists. I ran into a friend of mine at Best Buy yesterday, and they said, "Hey, I just sent you a message on Facebook. I'm getting married, and I would really love to see if you can recommend a makeup artist or a hairstylist." And they said, "I really love this one picture you posted." I said, "Oh, I did my hair and makeup in that." They're like, "Oh," and I thought about it. I can do my own hair and makeup. I enjoy doing it. I would prefer to most of the time because I know my face, I know my head.
Right.
But I purposely pull in artists for my photo shoots, for any large project I have, whether it's financially backed or not. I purposely want to pull in artists who are people I enjoy working with so that when this project becomes a success, I'm pulling the people I enjoy with me. I'm not by myself. I can credit more artists and give more artists an opportunity in each project, rather than just being all by myself and being a one-man band.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the joy in being a one-man band when you're always traveling alone?
Yeah. Well, and it also, I think that in areas perhaps where it is more of a direct weakness for ourselves, when we can call in and highlight someone else's strengths and we get to then utilize more of our strengths, it's a win-win.
Exactly.
Right?
Because if you're not stretching yourself thin, trying to do everything, and you're calling in a specialist, then you get to focus more on what you specialize in.
This is the silliest example, but it makes so much sense. I hired someone literally because one of the things that I do is I offer vision board workshops, right? So I provide all the materials and I lead small groups through this process around, meditation and visualization and vision board stuff and blah, 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 right?
Right.
So I've got probably up to 1,000 or 2,000 magazines at this point in my collection that I use, right? I hired someone literally to come trim the address label off the magazines to protect people's privacy and then organize all my magazines, right? Because that task was so overwhelming and frustrating for me. It was like haunting me. So I hired this person, paid her to just handle it. She did an amazing job, super quick, handled, organized, done. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to do this more often. So what's my point? I don't have very good organizational skills in some areas, and that is one of them. And so why not let her, who's an amazing little organizer, make some money, do it, handle it, feel good about helping me. I feel good about not having to deal with it. And then we both get to use our strengths, right?
Exactly.
I get to run the workshop. She gets to be that person that supports me in the organizational component.
Exactly. And it's an investment. You're investing in this person because you know that, yeah, I may be paying them out financially, but what I'm going to get back from the task they're doing, from their craft that they're giving me, I'm going to get back so much more. I'm going to get my time.
Yes, and I think that that's something is in the entrepreneurial or the solopreneur, as they call it now, where you're running your own business and you're a one-man show like we were talking about.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you're starting off, yeah, you're probably going to be doing a lot of stuff by yourself. But as you start to expanding it bigger, this is where I'm struggling right now. Is I'm right on the verge of do I hire an assistant or not? Because there's a breaking point where you figure out, okay, if I was able to allot these tasks, I could then focus more on this. But do I have the income flow coming in to justify that new expense, right? But you know that if you don't outsource, then how do you expand? So it's that tricky on the fence thing. And with us, there are certain things. You are a social media kind of guru compared to me in my mind, right? And that's one thing that I think is one of the first couple things that some people outsource are bookkeeping in a small business and social media stuff, which make sense because they're both usually foreign to a lot of business owners unless they're bookkeepers or social media experts. And it makes sense. It's like, why not let the experts handle that? Because they'll probably do it better than you could have in the first place. Yeah. Right? And then you get to highlight and focus more on what you do best. And that's a huge thing. I mean, I obviously, because I'm on my own, bookkeeping's fine with me. I run the bookkeeping for our business, but the social media is incredibly daunting. It's so unpredictable. And I myself, I enjoy working with social media in my business. Now, if you ask me personally, if it wasn't for my business, if it wasn't for my brand, I probably wouldn't have a social media. Right. I have no desire for it in my personal life. It does nothing for me. I would much rather, I would probably just not have it. Like, I don't actually go on my social media. If I want to find out something about a friend, I'm going to pick up the phone and give them a call. Wow. And so in my personal life, I don't enjoy social media. But in my business life, I enjoy it thoroughly. It depends what hat I'm wearing. Right. Right. Or it's more of a time filler. It's a big, you know what? I feel like Facebook is one of the biggest time vampires that we have right now. And that's why I don't like it in my personal life, because I feel like I can get sucked in, and next thing I know, I'm losing time. And I think I like what you said. When you want to know something about a friend, you pick up the phone. I appreciate you saying that, because a lot of people don't. If they want to know something about a friend, they go look at their Facebook and say, oh, they did get that job, or oh, they had their baby, or oh, they're, them and their boyfriend just had an anniversary. But then the actual exchange and the actual connection between the people never occurs. And I'm severely guilty of it, incredibly guilty of it. And that's why when I say I would rather pick up a phone and call my friend, is I am making a conscious decision in my life
to, because my brand is so severely reliant on social media, I'm making a conscious decision in my life for my personal life to not be reliant.
Yeah.
So I may be a little extreme in that, but it's because in my business world, I'm so extreme the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. And one of the things I think that I want to transition before we have our little break, I want to talk about, we said values, goals, and opportunities, right? So we're talking about strengths and weaknesses, but now let's transition into talking about values too, because when we know what our values are, and this is actually something I coach on a lot because most people do not have any idea what their personal values are, and they're just kind of operating on a reactive basis rather than a proactive basis of saying, how do I make sure I'm staying aligned with my values on a daily and consistent basis? Right? Yeah. And it applies in the personal and the professional world. Hands down, hands down, hands down. Because my core 3 values at this point in my life, because I believe they can change, are honesty, respect, and fun. So what that means and what that looks like is typically the way I'm operating. And the more that I've aligned with them, the more I see my life lining up with that. And the more I see opportunities, people, etc., lining up with those as well. It means that the people that I'm interacting with and the way that I'm interacting with them is honest and respectful. And that might seem like, well, duh, I'd hope so. But you have no idea in the business world how cutthroat and disrespectful, yes, things can become, you know. And I know that you and I were talking about this, and we both shared the one of the core values of respect, right? And we're starting to talk about the amount of disrespect in your world. And I was thinking maybe you could touch on that for a moment.
You know, when I was thinking, when we were discussing it and you mentioned respect, what I thought about respect in a couple different levels. Touching back on social media, I find that with social media that no one remembers that there's a human being behind that computer screen.
Right.
No one remembers that there's a human being behind that post that you just saw as you were scrolling your news feed. And the opinions that are physically vomited all over a Facebook comment are incredibly hurtful to, I'm speaking in first person, they're incredibly hurtful to me on the other end when they come out, whether it be a comment on me physically, like, oh, you look terrible in this picture, or it's a comment on something I said. It's incredibly hurtful. I'm hurt by it. I'm not resilient. Arrow's still purest. And it sickens me that lack of respect for just a common human being.
Yeah.
And what irritates me is the constant, well, it's just my opinion. Of course it's just your opinion, but your opinion is hurtful.
Yeah, especially if you're phrasing it a certain way.
Yeah, and your opinion is probably 99% of the time, an opinion on a Facebook post or image or link is unnecessary.
Hmm.
And I wonder if you were walking by that person, and me, for example.
Oh, people, no. People get real tough when they're on the internet.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
And here's a lot of people, what a lot of people say is, what I get a lot is, why would you do that to your body? Your mother must be really ashamed of you. Mm-hmm. And I kind of go, well, first off, my mom would eat your face off if she heard that. So yeah. I would be really careful.
And if you want to hear more about her and mom stuff, that's we talked about your mom and your guys' beautiful relationship in our first interview. So that's on the website and on YouTube too. And I know that was an important journey for you, and navigating that to make sure that everything stayed respectful and loving between you guys.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, my parents are my best friends.
Yeah.
They saved my life.
Yeah.
But I wonder, would you walk up to me at the mall and go, you have tattoos on your head. Why would you do that to your body? Because you know what? No one's ever done that to me. No one's ever walked up to me and said that. But hundreds of people have done it on the internet. So that's a respect thing. And also, the respect
it gets me all worked up. I'm like, I dare you.
Well, and another respect thing is being respectful of the industry. Now, there are, in alternative modeling, all alternative means is that it's not conventional. And conventional means runway and fashion. So you're going to have anything from women with a single facial piercing to full-blown fetish and pornography.
Wow.
And all of that is alternative.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Wow, okay.
It's it's all encompassing. So the question is, at what level of the scale, if you are in the alternative industry, whether it being a tattoo artist, a model, a photographer, a makeup artist, if you're in that industry, what's your scale? And some people, I mean, just the level of disrespect just because it's not their cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking particularly fetish because that's the obvious, or pornography, that's the obvious one that would really get people's goats going. But if it's not your cup of tea, just because you don't like it doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful to the person who's in it.
And don't engage in it. Don't support it. Don't be a supporter. Don't engage.
Just ignore it. Just walk away.
And that's, I think people forget that they absolutely have a choice in supporting what they believe in by what they choose to engage in or not.
And one thing I do like about social media is the like, the dislike, or the block button. You can really integrate that in your real life. I don't care who you are. There's no excuse. If you don't like something, you can block it out of your real life.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people forget how much control we do have over our own realities, right? And
we have complete control.
This is something, too, that people often forget, and it's a concept that what's the name of the book? It's a book that basically it grades all these different companies on how they interact with environmental rights, human rights, kind of the type of companies that they are in the world. And the point that it makes on its front page has resonated in my mind ever since. And I've had this book for quite a few years now. And it says that the dollars that we spend are the most significant votes that we cast. Meaning that the money we spend is basically how we're voting to create our future. So when we really think about that as being a very consumer-based country, the money that we spend needs to really be thought about carefully in how we want our future to become, right?
Yeah, because it is our vote.
Yes, and we really are voting on what we want more of, what we want to support. And that's part of the issue that people, I think, need to also recognize is if let's say you have an issue with a certain company, then please tell me you're not purchasing things from the darn company, And if you have a certain issue with a certain food or something like that, or a certain fast food chain, then don't eat there. Please don't eat there. But that's the biggest thing that I don't think people recognize is that they absolutely can take action and start standing up for what they believe in every single day. And one of the biggest ways they can do so is by being particular about what they're voting for, which is what they're spending money on.
And I think a big part of that is people feel trapped in their decision-making and their consumerism. I think that people feel trapped, and I think a big part of it is time and money.
Yeah.
I can't afford to eat healthy because, my organic vegetables at Safeway are twice as much as the regular vegetables at Safeway.
Yeah.
Well, of course, but have you explored the farmers markets in your area?
Right.
There are other options, but then exploring available farmers markets would require time.
Right.
And they might not feel that everybody has the time, but they may not feel that they have the time.
So coming back into priorities and values, right? So that's a big topic that we were going to really emphasize today. And then we're going to finish up with some talk about goals, right? Setting goals that are in alignment with your values.
Yeah.
And also a big thing that I think we need to touch on is embracing self-care, right? Because when you are building a business, it's very time consuming. And when you've got a family in conjunction with that, right?
Yeah.
Talk about how do we juggle this? And ironically, it's kind of what I support most of my clients with is how do you create work-life balance that's really genuine to the individual so they can really have a happier, healthier life, so they can enjoy their family, so they can have a successful business, and so they can really take care of themselves on a deep, true level that they only know because it's individual to them, right? And that they really need. And then as we are doing this, and I know you have been in sobriety for 3-4 years?
I'm going on my 4th year.
In August, right?
It's coming up, yep.
Perfect. And it's so amazing to me because that's another thing that I love. I think we need to do a show just on busting stereotypes. I think that'd be fun. Although stereotypes, I think, are very useful sometimes because humans like to compartmentalize things to understand them, right?
Exactly.
But when we're talking, people are probably listening like, wait, hold on. This girl does what? She's a tattoo and alternative model, but she's got 3 bachelor's degrees and she's sober. And it's like, yeah, because that's my path, right?
That's what it is. I mean, of course, everybody thinks I'm a drunk, and I, only care about wearing short skirts at clubs and getting wasted and partying. And I'm like, wow, I don't remember the last time I partied, but
yeah. And I think it really ties into what we're going to talk about right now, which two of your big priorities or values being your time and where it's going, and your sobriety, right?
Yeah, and that's something that you and I touched on in our private conversations is how in the time that I've spent in sobriety, it has gone from a priority to a value. Because I'm happy to say that I have the time in and I have the effort in that it's no longer a conscious decision. Most of the time, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's a very conscious decision, but for the majority of the time, my sobriety is not a conscious decision.
You're not having to actively work on it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely read my books, I read my inspirations, I partner with other people who are sober or clean. And I work with other women in the program, but I don't struggle day to day to avoid a drink anymore. And still struggle, but not day to day. And it's become more of a value because I can see what has come out of my life in sobriety.
Yes.
I can see that the things that I have in my life, my family, my brand, the business I run, it could not have happened outside of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
It just wouldn't. I don't believe it could have. Maybe it could have, but I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And I guess my belief on that is all that matters.
Yeah. And as we're creating our own lives and our own realities, right? It's so much about what do we believe in and what do we want and what do we not want, right?
Yeah.
And then as you were also talking about coming back to time, right? Time management, and not the time management. Again, I had mentioned this earlier, not the time management in the sense of, I spend an hour on this task and an hour on this task and this meeting and blah, 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 blah. What we emphasize for time management is choosing things that are, for lack of a better word, worthy of our time.
Yeah, and I agree, for lack of a better word. I hate that word of this isn't worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth, but and we'll come up with something different.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel that although I would love to participate in every single little opportunity that flies my way, it's more about my sanity.
Yeah.
If I am involved in 50,000 tasks, how much true attention and how much true dedication am I giving to each of these tasks?
Yeah.
They're going to end up getting very little from me.
Right.
Because I don't have the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And also knowing as we're starting, the whole thing we wanted to emphasize today was choosing activities and choosing opportunities based on our values, based on our priorities, based on where we want to give our time, right?
Yeah.
I was actually just coaching one of my clients around this because she's allowed herself to get into such a state of overwhelm. And the thing that my coach says that I find so on point is that overwhelm is simply when you've fallen out of alignment or fallen out of focus with your priorities, right?
Yeah.
And she's just in such a state of overwhelm. When we got really clear on what her priorities were, every decision she makes, she simply asks herself first, whenever someone asks something of her, because people constantly are, she simply thinks to herself, does this apply to one of my top 3 priorities? If the answer is yes, okay, consider doing it. If the answer is no, then don't. We don't need to have people guilt tripping us about what we're maybe choosing not to engage in. We don't need to have people thinking that we're being snooty or something like that. We can politely decline things that don't match us, that don't vibe with us, that aren't really in alignment with where we're heading right now.
Yeah, and I'm personally struggling with that in my own business. And I feel that the few times where I've stood my ground and said, I just don't have that time for that in my schedule right now. I really love the opportunity. Thank you for inviting me, but unfortunately, it can't happen right now, and it's really scary.
Yeah,
it is terrifying to feel like I'm passing up on an opportunity. Like what am I going to miss out on?
What's that called? A FOMO? Fear of missing out? That's like some big craze thing right now, right? FOMO?
But it's true. It's a fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And that and that fear of missing out, I've personalized to realize that's just part of me. I've always had that fear of missing out, and that's a part of my. I think if I can, as in my 20s, I just elected to get sober, and I was missing out on everything.
Right.
I missed out on all the cool parties. I missed out on a ton of my friends because they didn't know how to deal with my sobriety because they felt awkward inviting me to clubs and bars. And I felt if I could conquer that fear of missing out on fun life, then I can conquer any fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And now I go out to clubs and bars and shows, and people think I'm drunk anyway because I'm so eccentric. So it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, people think I'm wasted all the time anyway. But the fear of missing out on opportunities, like, say, for example, someone approaches me with a opportunity with the Holly doll to maybe model for a clothing brand, but that brand doesn't align with maybe some of my priorities. Maybe it doesn't align with my family priorities, or maybe it doesn't align with what I want the Holly doll to represent.
So, for example, let's just clarify that for people. So I think I can give an example when you said if it doesn't align with the priority of family, right? Let's say they want you to do a shoot on a Thursday night, but Thursday night is your family night where you guys make dinner together or something like that. Yeah, that's what you mean by saying, oh, thank you so much, but that doesn't actually fit with my schedule right now. Perhaps if you have it at a different time, then I can accommodate that,
That's exactly what it is. For example, my other half and I, we haven't taken a day off from our business since around August. And we don't mind. We love what we do, and we work together. So we're not missing out most of the time. But we elected that yesterday we were taking the day off. And we were going to go just do home stuff, go on a date night. And when we said Wednesday we're taking off, immediately about 4 separate opportunities came up for Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
For both of us, and they were pretty big opportunities. And every single one that came up, we looked at one another and said, "Sorry, you got to tell them no. We said Wednesday's our day off."
I can actually. It's funny that was yesterday.
That was yesterday.
Yesterday, I was working a little bit late. I had a late client, and I had forgotten that there was a mixer I was supposed to go to or invited to afterwards, and I had already told my partner that I'd be home at a certain time, right? And so I ended up texting him and saying, hey, I actually might not be there till this time because I forgot about this and this. And then, of course, he's like, I hate when you tell me that last minute and you change time frames on me. And I was just like, well, sometimes you... And so then it turned into an argument. And then I had to stop and check myself and say, wait a second.
I made a commitment.
1. 2, is this mixer my priority right now? Or is my relationship my priority? Right? And even though my top 2 priorities are my intimate relationship, and I emphasize that because it's not just any relationships. I'm not just going to say my relationships. It's that one specifically. And my business, right? Those are my top 2 priorities in my life right now, where I'm at. And that's okay with me, And even though it was still a business related thing, I knew that it wasn't what I meant by my business. It was an extra. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I had to really stop and say, okay, no, actually, if this isn't one of my top 2 priorities, why am I putting off one of my top 2 priorities for something that's not, right? And now I'm even upsetting one of the priorities,
Yeah, and that's another huge thing. Because not only, yes, you're an entrepreneur, and yes, you're a businesswoman, but you're also the other half of a pair.
Yeah.
And you have to keep in mind that you have to hold up your half of the bargain.
Yep. And when I teach and coach about, work-life balance so much, I mean, good thing that my priorities are those 2 things, but how am I doing managing them? And it's something that we constantly, especially as women in business, I think we constantly have to be looking at. And I mean, you and I could probably have another show that could be very controversial, because I could definitely talk about how I believe that as women, we do have responsibilities to be very present with our family, especially our children.
And I don't know how controversial it would be, because we'd be agreeing the whole time.
Well, yeah, no, I mean controversial for people that want to listen to it. And that's fine, because they don't need to. But, and I can expand on that, because what I mean is, people are often surprised. I actually just did a presentation to one of my networking groups the other week, and I said part of the reason I'm building this specific program for January is because it's all remote. It's online and it's via teleclass, and none of it's in person, because I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to move towards my end game goal when I started building my business, which was and is to have my business 90% run from home. So when I finally have my own children, I can be a stay-at-home mom and housewife. And that blows people's minds, because they're like, whoa, you, Jen Julius? Like, but you're so independent and you're such a businesswoman. I'm like, yeah. And part of my role in my life as a woman is to be a stay-at-home mom and a housewife for at least a few years.
And, you know, I went from, and I love that, because I went from working 70 hours a week managing an $8.5 million store, and that being my life.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. That was interesting. To quitting it all to stay home with my boyfriend's son, whom I pretty much took on as my own, happily. I mean, I was very happy to, and I enjoyed it, and I wanted to stay home with him until he went to school. And that's not, I don't do that because that's what women are supposed to do. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted out of my life. I wanted to be home with my family. When it's time to get up and go to school, his dad doesn't get up and take him to school, not because he doesn't want to, but because that's my job, and I want that to be my job.
Thank you.
When it comes to making meals and making breakfast, I do get up early and I make breakfast, because that's what makes me feel like I'm doing my role in my home. That's what makes me feel complete as a parent, as a mother, as the queen of my castle.
Yeah.
And it's not that he doesn't offer or he doesn't want to, but I'm like, no, that's my job. Get out of here. Get out of my kitchen.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I think that, unfortunately, one of the things that's happened is we've made such amazing progress, right, in our culture in the last 50 years, you know, of equality. Yeah. And starting to really to embrace equality. We're still nowhere near where we hopefully will be. But I think what comes along with that is a lot of shoulds. You know, where, well, why does this have to be somebody's role, and why does this have to be somebody's job, and, you know, why can't it be everybody's? It can, cool, but it still comes back to the individual basis that we were talking about briefly earlier. What is important to me? What are my values? What are my priorities, and what do I want to be doing and contributing in my family, with my business, as a community member, you know, and really maximizing then also on your strengths, because when I do play those roles that we just talked about, the cooking thing's going to be tricky for me.
Oh, yeah, well.
You know, and that's fine. And maybe that's something I'll work on. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But the point is that I get to figure out and choose, like, what are my strengths? What am I passionate about? What's important to me? And how can I make sure that I'm constantly aligning with that? It all comes back to, am I aligning with these things, right? Am I aligning with what's important to me? Am I aligning with what I want to be doing with my life and my time? And I really appreciate you saying, it's not because I'm a woman and it's my job. It's because I truly, genuinely want to do this. And I say, cool beans, you know?
And that's a huge thing. I mean, I've recently reconstructed my priorities, and I have our tattoo business as a priority. I have my own personal brand, but my immediate family, my little household, is another priority.
Yep.
And that's, again, not because I'm a woman, not because I work from home. It's because that's a huge priority for me. If there's a job that's available for me, or a gig that's available at a time where I'm set to be home because it's homework time, or it's dinner time, or it's family movie night, I'm sorry, it doesn't work out. And if the schedule can't work around my family's schedule, that is going to have to be an opportunity I miss out on.
This gets me really emotional, because I think that I want to be clear with people that what we're talking about, how do I say this? Okay. What we're talking about right now is where we're at right now with our businesses. Mm-hmm. And some people might be in a much more of a starter phase, where sometimes you are going to be saying yes a lot more to opportunities, where you might be compromising a little bit more and maybe not saying, okay, I can't make it to dinner, I got to take this opportunity. But I would challenge you to then also consider your business is probably highlighted as your primary priority, period, at that point in the game and at that point in your life.
Yeah.
See what I mean? So I think that some people, I don't want to confuse people when we're talking about this to like, well, but I'm just starting out and should I really be saying no to a bunch of stuff? That's not what we're saying. We're not saying say no to a bunch of stuff. We're saying when you have entered the game that you're the phase of business where you're a little bit established enough where you can be making some choices or need to start making some choices around where your time's going.
More of a need than a can.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is more of a need because there still are times where both of us probably go, I should really go do this, but I actually already made a commitment. I'm going to fulfill that.
Yeah, and you know what it is I remember a few years back when I really started developing this as a brand, and it was no longer a fun hobby.
Yeah.
When it became my career, it became my job. I was pushing off a lot of family stuff, and I'm lucky that I have a partner that was helping me.
Yeah.
That would pick up the slack and was fine with picking up the slack. Was happy to do it in order to see my success.
Yeah.
Because he's also an entrepreneur. He's also a small business owner, and understands. So I'm lucky in that sense. But I was taking every opportunity that came my way regardless. I didn't even care. Because it was more about just establishing myself as a business person, and I would always be a parent. I would always be a wife. I would always be a family member. So I knew it would be there, and I knew I could come back and fix it. Or I could not even fix it, but I could come back and make it a larger priority.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if that's the right way to go. I'm not sure, but it happened to work for me.
Yeah.
I had a supportive family and I happened to have a business where I'm not missing out on time with my child. I can bring him with me. Come on, let's go. And you know, he can come to the shop. He can come on set. As many a times you'll see him in the background, and and he's friends with all of my regular photographers, makeup artists, hairstylists, wardrobe stylists that I work with. They all know him.
Yeah.
They incorporate him. They let him play on set. It's fine. That's my brand. That's what allows it. But if your brand doesn't, you have to know when to draw the line.
And I think that that's what it needs to come back to is you and I happen to have similar values and priorities around business and family, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that it needs to be everybody else's. And that's what I want to be clear about for people that are listening. You know, there are people that are completely satisfied being single and focusing on their business hardcore and just hanging out with their friends for relaxation time. And that's okay. You know?
And then what maybe your value is friendship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that's the case, you would just be replacing a word for a word.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's what I want to really emphasize is for us in our journey, it's figuring out how do I make sure that my time keeps aligning with my priorities, which keep aligning with my values. Mm-hmm. You know, they all go together. And I think that therein lies the challenge is to really drive this home for listeners, making sure you're looking at your own individual needs, your own individual values, and going from there. You know, understanding what's important to you. What do you want to create in your life? And then are you making choices that align with that? Choice is one of my big power words, right? Because we're always making choices all the time. Every single action we take every day is a choice. It just might be subconscious.
Well, yeah. And it is a choice. You don't have to be forced into a decision.
Right.
But that doesn't make the choice any less scary.
Oh, yeah.
It's most of the time it's terrifying, but we do have the choice. There might be repercussions, but we have the choice.
So wow, time flies when you're having fun, huh? So let's transition into goals. Because one of the things that we said we'd talk about, and this also we can talk about self-care potentially intertwined with that, because when we're looking at goals as businesswomen, you got to have some, right? Mm-hmm. There's a Native American saying that I was looking at a while ago that I thought was interesting, but not sure how much I vibed with it, which was goals are elusive. The unaimed arrow never misses. And I was like,
I've heard that.
That's interesting. But then I went, but you know what? You want to at least kind of have some kind of idea where you're heading, right? And what you want. So you know if you're working towards it. And it also helps in discerning between opportunities, right?
Right.
So that's what I kind of want to, as we start to finish up, to talk a little bit about is, as we're setting goals for ourselves, why are we setting them? You know, what's the reason behind it? What's the emotional connection? I was just on Stephen Campbell's show yesterday, and we talked about this. Why are you choosing this goal? Is it even important to you? Because a lot of people set goals that aren't even their own goals. They're goals that they think they should be making.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, my parents did this. Like, both my parents are lawyers, so I'm going to go to law school and be a lawyer too. That's my goal. Why? Do you even like law? Because the answer might be no.
Yeah, and if the answer is yes, that's great. But
yeah, hooray.
But what if it's not? I mean,
yeah.
I can definitely say that some of my goals in my younger years, in my early 20s, were definitely my parents' goals. Now, were they bad goals? No. It got me through college. College was not a goal of mine. And honestly, even the degrees I was in, they just seemed, I couldn't decide, so I just picked one that seemed like it could kind of work. Thank God it works in what I'm doing now, consumer science, business marketing. But
I know, right? Perfect.
yeah, exactly. No, that's not what I intended to go in. I intended to work for a huge, some huge company in New York somewhere. That I didn't intend to work for myself. That was never my intention.
Yeah.
But through setting some goals that maybe because we're younger, we're more impressionable, setting some goals that were my parents' goals or my family's goals helped me to define myself.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you have to make a decision of knowing which is which.
Yes. What's important to you as the individual.
Yeah, what's important. And at the time, maybe my parents' decision was really important to me.
Yeah.
Maybe what my parents viewed me as was really important.
Well,
and then as I grew, my individuality was important.
Yes. And I think that the nice thing and the tricky thing at the same time is that a lot of people, especially around values, end up adopting their parents' values or their family's values, but not necessarily fully assessing if those are also their own values.
And right? I think part of it is being comfortable with values changing.
Yes.
It's okay for them to change.
Yes.
And
not having the certain values that people might emphasize as values you should have.
Like we discussed loyalty.
Okay. Ooh, should I explain that one?
Let's do it because we discussed that and that really hit home. That really hit home to me when we discussed it.
And people have to kind of understand my language to probably follow this one. But when I look at my top 3 values of honesty, respect, and fun, I sometimes would feel guilty that one of my primary values wasn't loyalty. And I'd be like, ooh, Jen, I don't know if that's a good sign, right? Like, what's up with that? And what I realized was, to me, loyalty really does go hand in hand with honesty and respect, right? So what I recognized was honesty and respect. Okay, so these are very significant to me. Loyalty, on the other hand, is more so something that is created from those two things existing. And what I mean is, to take that a step further, is people often describe loyalty as this kind of undying loyalty no matter what, right? So, no, I'm loyal to my friends, or I'm loyal to my family no matter what happens. Da, 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 da. Well, what I realized in my journey in life is that is simply not true for me. I have such a high value around honesty and respect that if someone does not meet those two values with me, I no longer have loyalty to them.
And that's okay.
And I think for some people, it's like, and it's not that if someone makes a screw up and does something, it's not that I won't forgive them, right?
Right.
But my bigger point is that if the honesty and respect pieces are not being met, my loyalty to them is not going to be met either.
And I really, when you said loyalty should be but is not one of my core values, and I had you explain it, it hit home with me as well.
Yeah.
Because just because it's a family member, just because they're blood, or just because they've been your best friend since kindergarten, or just because this person is your boss, it is okay to say, I'm not loyal to you because you've not been loyal to me.
Or you're not, like, and the example that I can think of is let's say I have this long-standing relationship, maybe with a family member or a friend, and they all of a sudden start lying to me and start punking me behind my back, right? Yeah. What do you think that's going to do to our relationship and the loyalty that I have to them?
Because obviously you're not being treated.
I'm not being
You're not
respected.
being treated as a value.
Yeah. I'm not being respected, and they're not being honest with me. I mean, especially lying, because that's my kind of number one value. If they're lying to me about stuff to my face, we got a problem.
Yeah.
And loyalty is going to be severed quick. Whereas a lot of people will tolerate a lot more when they feel a really deep sense of loyalty. They'll put up with a lot. And that's your deal. Cool.
And that's
not
their
really how I
value, and that's
operate.
okay.
Yep. And that's not really how I operate.
And that hit home with me because when I have to break a loyalty to somebody, when I feel that emotionally I have to break a tie with a person whom maybe is still in my inner circle, maybe because of the business I'm in, they're still someone I cross paths with, which it happens and has happened recently. There's still someone I have to cross paths with. I still have to be amicable, but I have to be okay with myself saying, I have no loyalty to you. I have no loyalty to you because you have disrespected me. You've made me feel bad. You've made me look bad. So I'm not going to go out and disrespect you, but I'm also not going to seek out your friendship. I'm not going to seek out any partnership with you either.
Yeah. I think that also knowing where your loyalty lies strongly is important and helps with this, because I think that then if you have almost a hierarchy of loyalties, right?
Yeah.
It helps with discerning between which ones you would let go of or not. So for example, if I have a certain loyalty with someone from a relationship that I've had for a year or two or whatever, and it's a pretty good relationship, maybe a business relationship or friendship or something, and they all of a sudden start disrespecting my family or my partner, guess what is going to probably happen to that loyalty? Which loyalty am I going to be more loyal to?
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing. I think that's a huge thing in my personal life as well, is if you don't like the company I keep, the company that's close to my heart, whether it be friends, family, or whatever, I feel like we're going to constantly have an abrasive conflict of interest. So I'm going to do us both a favor, and I'm going to sever the relationship. And it maybe not officially like, hey, get out of my life, but I'm going to keep my distance because you don't value the people who are close to me.
Yeah.
And it's a personal safety, and that's where we go back to protecting our sanity.
Yeah.
Why, and it's okay. And I think that's what a big part of. I think that's the biggest thing about aligning your values, your goals, and your priorities.
Yes.
Is that knowing that whatever decision you make, because they're all individual, is okay.
Yeah.
And there is no right or wrong answer. I mean, of course, people are going to tell you there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah, yeah.
But everybody's going to tell you that. But you are the only person who can determine if the decisions you make off of your values, your goals, and your priorities is the correct decision.
Boom.
And if you say it is, then it's okay.
Boom. And I think that it does take a lot of work to get there, you know? And I think that it's not something that we consciously are taught to work on, but oh my goodness, if you're building a business and you've got some goals in your life, you better sure as heck know what your values and priorities are too.
Yeah.
You know, and to come back to goals and what we were just talking about, the thing about goals when we're setting them is making sure, hey, what kind of goals am I setting? Are they really things I want? And are they aligning with my values and priorities? And why do I want them? You know? Yeah. And then also, when we're setting goals, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we actually kind of have a plan of action to achieve them.
The plan of action is always good.
Yeah, you know, and it's good because, yeah, we might want to have like some long-term goals, and we maybe not have, of course, we're not going to have an action step for like a goal that's 10 or 20 years from now, but at least we can kind of break it down to know that the mini goals we have are keeping us on track towards that big end game. You know, like for me, when I first started building a business, it wasn't in my immediate future that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and a housewife. But I knew that was one of my end game goals. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that one of the ways I could create that freedom for myself, while also knowing that I didn't want to do those things without having some kind of work as well, because that's the type of person I am. I really get a lot of fulfillment from the type of work I do and from having my own source of income that's individually created by myself, etc.
Yeah.
I knew that starting and running a business was going to be the way for me to achieve those things. I didn't know how I was going to get there, didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew this was some of the action steps to start taking. You know,
and that's good that you recognize that your sense of individuality within your family structure is important. That may not be your top 3, but that is a value.
Right.
And that makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I agree. That's how I am. Now, when I first quit my, what I call my big girl job, and I was staying home, it wasn't long before I realized that was one of my values as well. Because I went from being completely reliant on nobody to being completely reliant on my partner.
Yeah.
That lasted a very short time because I felt bad about myself, which in turn I was taking it out on my partner.
Mm.
So I think individuality is a huge thing, and that's what has made, I think, you said we've come huge steps in equality for women. But I think
for people in general, I mean, even 50 years ago, we had black people drinking out of different water fountains.
Exactly.
I mean, let's keep it real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But women in general, I think we've made huge steps for women to own their own businesses. We've encouraged them to go out on their own and be individuals.
Yep.
And I think that is what has helped a lot of women who still want families to say, okay, I still want to be home with my family. And now it's okay for me to do that and run a business.
And unfortunately, though, the culture has pushed it almost to such a side that we've got women that are trying to work full-time and be the full-time housewife and be the full-time mom. And those are all 3 jobs, straight up.
Yeah, that's about 8 jobs.
Yeah, for real. And that's where it's like, okay, hold on. I understand that this is all important, but we got to make sure you're also not driving yourself crazy.
And we got to make sure that you're not giving only 30% to each job.
Exactly.
And I think that's where, this is probably an entirely different subject, but communication comes in. Communication with your people that you collaborate with in your business.
Yes.
Communication with your partner, and also communication with when they become able to communicate with your child.
Yeah.
And being able to let them know that this is what we're going to do. You're going to come to work with me, or I'm working right now, and being able to communicate, but we're going to set aside time to go out and ride our bikes at this time. Gives them something to look forward to. So not only are you communicating with your collaborators that I can't show up Wednesday, but I can be there Thursday.
Yep.
You're communicating with your partner, hey, I have these other 2 things going on. Can you do the laundry today?
Yes.
And
yes. Did you hear what Holly just said? Can you do the laundry today? For some reason, that is so hard for women to ask for, is help and support around those kinds of things, right?
It's the most terrifying thing to me in my world right now.
Wow.
In my world right now, in my relationship of 4 years, where I have run a business, we have run a business together, we have raised a family together, we have built a home together, it is still terrifying for me to ask my partner, hey, can you fold the laundry today? And he doesn't argue with me when I do. He maybe grumbles a little bit, but he does it, and he's proud of himself when he does it, but it is still terrifying for me to ask him to help me with my quote-unquote women duties. And
and that's where it gets tricky. So we're talking about these things that we want to do because we want to do them, right? But then we also have to be conscientious of asking for help and support and not boxing ourselves in too much to, well, this is what I want, so doesn't this mean this is what it's supposed to look like? Yeah. Whoa. You get to create some of that, right? And I think that that's what we have to really recognize is this might be a priority for us, right? So like I said, I want to end up being a stay-at-home mom and being a housewife and playing that role for a little while. Does that mean I'm never going to ask for help around the house? Absolutely not. But, you know, the trick is also, if it is maybe out of the norm, let's say you're always the one folding the laundry, it comes back to communication. And a little ninja coaching tip, here we go, around communication. When you can actually frame it in such a way that you're helping the other person understand what they're doing for you, what they're giving you, how they're supporting you while asking for help, it makes the whole experience and the whole request and probably the whole answer a little bit more powerful and a little bit more magical, really, because when you can actually say, hey, honey, I really was hoping to do a little bit of work on preparing for my photo shoot tomorrow so I can really take full advantage of the opportunity. I was wondering if you could support me by folding the laundry this evening so I could free up that extra 20 minutes to make sure that I'm fully prepared for the shoot tomorrow. Would that be okay?
And I completely agree. And Because there are two ways to go about it. You can go about it the way you just did, or you can go about it...
Never help me with the laundry.
Never help me with the laundry.
Which, unfortunately, a lot of women end up popping off like that because they've let so much resentment build up that now they're in this place where they're just ready to pop off everything because they feel like nobody ever helps them. But guess what? If you're not asking for help, how are they supposed to help you?
And you know what? That is what I'm most guilty of right now, is I will... Because I do have my little individual hat on, I can do everything because I'm a woman, hear me roar. I do build up resentment to the point where I explode. And that is the one thing that I am working on most in my life right now, is being able to ask for help before I break.
I think that you and I just found a new value for ourselves.
I think so.
Individuality within partnership.
I think so.
Or individuality coexisting with partnership or something.
We'll have to hone in on the title, but it's definitely being able to assert your individuality and assert yourself as a single entity within a village, and being able to say, "Hey, I need help here.
Yes,
I need help here," and it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of a human being. It doesn't make you less of a woman. It doesn't make you less of a parent or a business person. It makes you human.
Yes.
And being able to say, I'm human, I need help.
Yes.
And I think a big part of it is thanking your partner, or thanking your collaborators, thanking your business partners. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate you, going to that meeting that I couldn't make it to because I had to go to my kids' school play. Right. Really appreciate you doing that. Or I really appreciate you folding laundry so that I could totally get my wardrobe ready.
And oftentimes people want to help and support us. They just need to know how. That's a huge thing, is when you just say, I need help, or you never help me, tell them what to do. Yeah.
I'm personally that way. If someone says, I need you to help me with the house is destroyed, I need you to do stuff. Well, what's destroyed in the home? Because I'm looking at it and the house seems fine to me.
It's the example that when I used to coach juveniles on probation and their families, we'd talk about like chores, for example, right? Yeah. And the parents would be all upset that the kid wasn't doing that. When they told the kid to do the dishes, he never did them right. I said, well, have you shown him how to do the dishes? What do you mean if I show him how to do the dishes? Anyone knows how to do the dishes. I said, not true. I said, because to one family, if they have a dishwasher, doing the dishes might mean simply rinsing and putting the dishes in the dishwasher and pushing start. Yeah. I said, to another family, it might be washing all the dishes by hand, drying them all by hand, and putting them all away. I said, so we have to be clear about what we're asking and what our expectations are if we want them to be fulfilled, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to think of it as you're talking, and juveniles is a great example, because if anybody's coming into something that they're not used to, whatever their age, they're like a child.
And sometimes we have to explain things a little bit more thoroughly to just help them understand it. Just help them see and get that this is the reasoning, this is the explanation. This is why we do this way. Because sometimes, especially with kids, they need to understand, like, why do we fold our clothes freshly when they come out of the dryer? Oh, well, it helps them not be as wrinkled.
We just went through that.
Why do we hang up a sweatshirt that's damp on a hanger rather than in a ball? Well, do you want it to be dry the next morning?
And it's true. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've told our child to put away his clothes. Put away your clothes. And then I come back and they are in crumples, all shoved into one drawer. Yeah. Not organized. All the pants, the shirts, the socks, and the underwear, all in one drawer, stuffed to where the drawer can't close.
But they're put away.
But they are put away. And you know what? I had to take a step back and go, that's all I told him to do.
Yes.
I told him to put his clothes away. He put them away. They're not on the floor. In his mind, they're away.
Yep.
And I can't get mad at him, because the problem doesn't lie with him. The problem lies with my explanation.
Exactly. So, wow. Okay. I love how me and you can just talk about everything
all at once.
So the last thing we really wanted to hone in on before we wrap up for today is, as we're setting goals, the new year's coming. We're recording the show in December for those of you that listen later on. The new year's coming. People are setting goals. It's a huge time where people are setting New Year's resolutions and setting goals. And what Holly and I think really just want to encourage you to do is to really stop and say, hey, why am I setting this goal? Why do I really want it? And when you can really tune into that, it's so much more powerful. And the likelihood of you being able to achieve it, I believe, really skyrockets. And then the next trick is to make sure that you're aligning your values and your priorities with the goal that you're wanting to achieve, right?
Yeah. Or vice versa.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then finally, make sure, this is exactly why it's funny, because this is exactly why I created my 28-day jumpstart for New Year's solutions, right? Is when you can do those things and you can get clear about your goals. And then you also, next step is have a system in place to almost guarantee your success. Because really, if let's say you want to save $30 in a month. Well, as long as you save $1 a day, guess what? You're going to achieve that goal. But a lot of people don't take that next step and really break it down to make sure that, first of all, their goal is realistic, right? Because if I say I want to lose 100 pounds in January, probably not very realistic.
It's probably going to be illegal.
Yes, right. But when I can break it down and make it into action steps, make sure I have the tools, make sure I have the support, make sure I have the system to do it, then that makes my likelihood of achieving my goals so much more. And when we put all of it together, making sure the goals in alignment with our values, our priorities, and then making sure we've got a system in place, that we've got the resources that are going to allow us to have the tools to do so, now we're going to be on fire.
Yeah, and resources is huge for your goals. You have to know what you have at your fingertips, or what you're accessible.
Yeah.
I can't say that my goal is to learn how to be a jet fighter pilot next year.
Right.
I do not know a single jet fighter pilot.
Right.
Who could even help me and put me in the right direction.
I hear you. Yep, exactly. And that's where we really have to stop and check ourselves. And it's great to have some long-term goals, but then we also want to make sure we've got a couple short-term that are leading us on our path there. Mm-hmm. So with that, Holly, how can people find out more about you?
The easiest way to find me is my website, thehollydoll.com, where you will see links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which are all under The Holly Doll. All very streamlined. You can also hashtag The Holly Doll as well, which will take you to all of my work and work I've done with other collaborators.
Perfect. I love it. And thank you so much, all of you, for listening to Information and Inspiration with Jen Julius. For more information about me and to check out some of my previously recorded shows, you can go to jenjulius.com. That's JenJulius.com. You can like me on Facebook at facebook.com/JenJuliusCoaching. Also on Instagram now. I'm pretty excited about that. Woohoo! Jen Julius Coaching. And thank you so much for listening in. And hopefully, Holly and I provided some tools for you to use as you're moving forward in the world. Whether you're a young businesswoman like we are, or whether you're just trying to get your head on straight with your goals, with your values, with your priorities and opportunities. Really, the biggest thing we can say is check in with yourself and be true to yourself, right? It sounds cliche, but it's really what it all comes down to.
It's cliche for a reason.
Because it's true.
Because it's true.
Perfect. With that, thank you so much for listening. Take care.